At any point during this webinar, if you do have questions during the presentation, please post those in the chat box to everyone. That way, as we know in our classrooms, probably someone else has the question and they will be able to see the response. Please feel free to use the chat box to communicate with each other and build community. If you have a particular piece of information that you feel like is crucial that has helped you in your CASAS implementation, we would love for you to share that with your peer community today. We are recording this webinar and the PowerPoint will be posted at casas.org. We'll show that to you in just a minute. Today's goals are overview of the goals test series, test forms, levels, blueprint, and the test administration manual. TAM stands for the Test Administration Manual. The purpose today is to look at the fidelity of implementation, specifically with eTests and TOPSpro implementation. There will be, Linda will be talking about paper implementation briefly. We'll look at the test sessions, the default test sessions. Oscar will share with us retesting. He'll demonstrate looking at the next assigned tests and post-testing. Preparing for eTesting. I will talk a little bit about students and staff and how we can prepare for eTesting. And Oscar will walk us through a testing day as if you were in the testing lab and that procedure. We will look at a few of the CASAS website resources throughout the presentation. Many of our help docs answer the questions that you have. And if we have a chance, we will review ongoing maintenance issues with TOPSpro and the functionality of TOPSpro as it relates to ongoing maintenance. If you have any questions, yes, today will be recorded. Thank you very much. All right. Linda, thank you so much.
Right. Hello, everyone. I'm going to very quickly walk you through some of the features of the new goals series. It's been out for more than a year, so I hope this is familiar to everyone. But mostly to make you aware that this is in the PowerPoint and it's something you can go back to when you look on the website afterwards. But this is what our reading goal series looks like. This is the test that's now approved for ABE and ASE students. Next slide. And the next chart shows the test forms and their form numbers and the amount of time, maximum allowable time for them. The next slide shows the math. As I said, I'm going very quickly, but all of this is on our website, and we've devoted previous national webinars to going into the series in detail. But just to give you the very quick overview. So the math goals series has an appraisal and then 2 levels, and the chart shows you how that plays out. Then the next slide, this is important. I want everyone to be aware that we have done some updates to the test administration manuals. And so just if you could please check which ones you have, and if you do not have for reading goals the 2nd edition, which came out in 2019, please let us know and we will replace the one that you have with the updated one. And also the math goals came out with a 2nd edition in 2019 with some edits. So please check to make sure you have that 2nd edition. Also, last November, we made one change in the math appraisal cut point, the 900M. And this was actually in response to input that we got from the field that the appraisal was placing students, too many students into the higher level. And so we raised the cut point by 1 point, and we've monitored since, at least in the online version, to make sure that it is doing a better job now. So, and that should reduce the amount of retesting that you need to do with students getting placed into a level that is too high for them. So
Linda,
all of this, yes.
If someone doesn't have that 2nd edition or they did not get the updates in November, what are the instructions for how to do that?
So Yes, so if you, you do not need to get a new Math Goals TAM if you have already the second edition that came out in 2019. The only change that came out in November was that the cut point was changed to 15 or higher to take the leveled CD. So if it's just that November 2019 change, you do not need a new manual. You just need to change that in your manual. We did send a global email out to inform everyone about this, and I will say too that if you did not receive that email, please do contact us, CASAS@CASAS.org, and we'll make sure you are on the list to get all future emails with these kinds of announcements. So hopefully that's clear, and just check and make sure you have the latest version.
Great, and we have a question about emailing the manual, and Linda, I'll let you address that briefly.
Yes, unfortunately we do not send out soft copies of the test administration manual. It has, you know, answers to the tests, so it needs to be secure. So if you do need an updated version, please, as I said, contact us, and we will send out the newer version in a hard copy. All right. Another thing, just very briefly to let you know, is that we now have available self-scoring answer sheets if you're doing paper testing in the Goals series. So for the 900R, the appraisal, and the 900M, the reading and math appraisals, you can order them. They're a little expensive, but we understand that some programs really appreciate having them because it's easier to score them quickly. So that's available and is in our online catalog if you'd like to order those.
Linda, we have another question from Catherine Porter in Illinois about the eTest locator automatically adjusting to the new cut scores. Absolutely,
yes. Yes. As I mentioned, everything online was also adjusted, and just we needed to get the word out about the paper version. So, yes. And also, I wanted to let you know that we did update, over the summer, we updated the math blueprint. So please go to the Math Goals page on the CASAS website, and you'll see the new version of that math blueprint. It's not drastically different, but we did make a few changes. So just to let you know, you can check that out. And these, again, we made some changes to the, not to these charts. These are on the CASAS website. Please basically refer to the CASAS website for the latest versions of these kinds of charts where they give scale scores and especially grade levels. If you go to the next slide, we did update these grade level charts for both reading goals and math goals. So the ones that you might have, if you didn't check since, I guess, the summertime, please go back in and make sure you get the latest version. We added K, that was something that was not there before, and made a few other adjustments in the ranges. So please go on the website, go to the next one. This is the Title I, and get these. The ESL hasn't changed, but here it is. It's also on the website. And just a few tips. The main one in red there is that if you are experiencing any slow loading of the test as students are taking it, it could be an issue that has to do with internet bandwidth. So, you know, this can be a problem, and we don't want students to have that experience when they're taking the test. So you may need to increase your internet bandwidth, possibly reschedule your testing to, if you can, to a time that's not as busy at your program, where there aren't as many people using the internet. All right, these are a few just other tips that you can use a physical calculator. The eTest does end automatically when the time is up, so you can have students taking different tests and starting at different times. And also just to encourage you to use a touch screen for students that may not be familiar with computers in some way. So very quickly, those are some tips. And without further ado, I'm going to go back to Christine and then on to Oscar Pena.
Great, thanks, Linda. So just to provide a brief context today, we are focusing on eTests and TOPSpro and implementing CASAS with Fidelity. And in the context of going live, there are multiple steps to implement with Fidelity. One of the things Oscar is going to show you We've had several calls coming in to tech support about default test sessions, creating test sessions. So Oscar's going to address that in the demonstration and show you how to check for that. The default test sessions are already provided. And we highly recommend that you conduct that trial run. And what that looks like is having a few of your staff members log on and participate like they are participants in your program or your customers. So especially proctors and coordinators, this is very beneficial for them to see the experience from beginning to end. So as a way of providing professional development internally, helping your staff on that trial run is a really great way to prepare your staff and prepare each other for testing session day. One thing that we do want to make note of is if you have a last minute request the day of your scheduled testing, if you call in and you still have not registered your testing stations, that's step 8, we will not be able to walk you through that process in an emergent or urgent way. It really is something that we highly recommend that you do the week before you start up, as well as then conducting that trial run before you go live and begin your testing. I'm not going to go into all of these slides, but I want to make sure that you know that they are available. The last steps of the Go Live checklist, it's very important that you know all of these slides are available to you in the PowerPoint that we are providing to you. And I want to just give you a chance to see that. And give me just a second. So as you see, there are several slides in here that approach the pre-test sessions, approach all of the steps, step 9, all the way through testing and retesting. So an important note about retesting sessions. Retesting sessions are configured. Oscar's going to share with you looking at those retest sessions. Below accurate range, the star, retesting is, or asterisk, is required. And a conservative estimate, of course, is that diamond. Retesting is also required for pretests and is recommended before the next term of enrollment. There are just a few notes about getting staff ready for testing day. And these slides are available to you to review. Obviously, again, we want to make sure that those testing stations are ready to go. Oscar's going to share with us how to bookmark the eTests on the desktop and the review of testing day procedures. There's a link that will be in this PowerPoint for you from our website, as well as a day of testing script many of you have seen in our help documents, and we'll show those to you in the demonstration. That being said, we also have an eTest sampler as well as sample test items in paper form that you can use to help get your students ready for testing day. We have a lot of calls coming in about how do you help prepare students for testing day. So we've provided some resources for that as well. And then Oscar will also talk about starting and stopping test sessions and test interruptions. So that being said, I would love to turn it over to Oscar Peña.
All right. Hello, everyone. This is Oscar Peña. Can everybody hear me just fine?
We can.
Very good, very good. So good morning and afternoon for those in the East Coast. I'm going to go ahead and move to my computer. Let me know if you guys are seeing my computer here. Let's see.
Sharing, Oscar, so you should be able to do that now.
Okay. Do you guys see my Word document over here?
Not yet.
Let's see, share. There you go. How about now?
Yes, sir.
Very good. All right. So as I said, my name is Oscar Peña, and I am the technology trainer in CASAS Tech Support. I'm one of them. And here's my contact information. In the event you need to follow up with any information. We, as you know, we're limit with time, so we're gonna try to cover as much information as possible. But in the event that you need to follow up with any questions, please feel free to send me an email or send our tech support group an email or a phone call. So our email for the tech support group is techsupport@casas.org, and the phone number is 1-800-255-1036, option 2. We're open 6 to 5 Pacific time. Okay. All right. So we're gonna go ahead and cover the following areas. We're gonna go ahead and go over the default testing sessions. We're gonna go ahead and go over preparing for eTest, that is before the actual test, and then we're gonna go over the procedure for the testing day. So we're gonna go ahead and start with your default testing sessions. For the purpose of this training, we're gonna be using our simulation database. CASAS has a simulation database, which, by the way, you're welcome to use at any point. You can do it from your computer, from home, from anywhere you have internet connection. You don't have to have an account with CASAS in order to use this. This is just a simulation database. The advantage of this database is that you can delete, you can import, you can export, you can do whatever you want with this data, because this data is to be reset overnight. Now, one thing to disclose is that this information is public. It's available to anybody else who is connected to this database. So just a piece of information there. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to my eTest application. One thing to mention beforehand is that we do have a demo applications. And how do you access those demo applications? You can access that through our our CASAS website. As you see over here on my screen, this is our CASAS website, www.casas.org. Make sure you enter the W's, because it won't take you to the website without the W's. So once you're at the CASAS website, you can go ahead and click on Training and Support on the top menu, and then on the side menu, you can click on eTest Online Help. Under the eTest Online Help, not only you have tons of help documentation here that will walk you through the steps of registering your computers, registering your students, steps to replicate your testing sessions, but also you have the link for CASAS eTest Sampler. So if we click on the CASAS eTest Sampler, you're going to get to see our application for eTest Sampler. So just to quickly show you, I'm just going to go ahead and click on the Reading Goals B. Test sessions and value. Oh, great. Let's go ahead and try a different one over here. Might be because it's
if you click,
yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
all
there
right.
you go.
All right. So this shows you the scenario. It's just the environment we have for testing. So here you'll see that you have the directions on the top, and we're going to go ahead and click on the arrow. So as you see the format that the application uses, you have the main picture or a question in the center, and then on the side you have the question with the possible answers. So the user is to select any one of these. Notice that you also have the plus and minuses. This is to zoom in and zoom out for both. And you also have on the top the ID for the student, the name, the section you're on. This is currently practice, and then you have the arrow, which is your next button. So just to quickly show you what is more or less the environment of testing for eTest. So this is a good way for you to either have your teachers or even the students practice on the environment of testing. It is good because the teacher will know what to expect from the student, what the student's going to go through, and on the student end, it's always good because they get to ease out the nervousness of testing. These are not the actual items, but they're related. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and now switch to the application for eTest. Now, as I said, we're going to be using the simulation server. Notice that this is my URL for the simulation database. That is etestonline.org /Rolling Hills. So Rolling Hill is our simulation agency, /HTML5. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and click on the sign in on the upper right-hand corner. And in order to log in, you would have to be either a proctor, a coordinator. So as you know, the proctor starts and stops the sessions. The coordinator, on the other hand, edits the sessions. So for the purpose of starting your session, we're going to go ahead and log in as a proctor. So my default agency, my simulation agency number is 4908. I am logging in as a proctor. CASAS has 50 user accounts. You have 51 actually, 0 to 50. So Proctor 0, Proctor 1, Proctor 2 at rhas.org. rhas.org, RHAS stands for Rolling Hills Adult School. So again, the agency is going to be 4908. The user is going to be Proctor. I'm logging in as 0 to let you guys follow as 1 through 50 at rhas.org. Now your password is going to be Proctor if you're logging in as a Proctor, or Coordinator if you're logging in as Coordinator. Again, remember, if you're logging in as a Proctor, you would only be able to start and stop your sessions, so you can play the role of the Proctor. And if you're logging in as a Coordinator, you would only be able to edit the sessions. Now, I'm sure the question might come around and say, can we be both? Yes. For the purpose of training here, you cannot be both, but at the agency, when you're live, the user can potentially be both a proctor and coordinator. Obviously, they would have to take the training, pass the training, being set up with proctor and coordinator access by the data manager. All right, so we're going to go ahead and log in as proctor, all lowercase. All right, very good. So these are my sessions. Now, notice that I have used a series of filters here in order to only see the sessions that I want. Your sessions are automatically set by CASAS. So when you are set up with CASAS, where you're giving your agency ID, once you fulfill your checkup list, CASAS will go ahead and put the default testing sessions for you. In this case, as you can see on my screen, I've set up my sessions to show only the ESL sessions. So here you see a total of 10 sessions, and basically CASAS will provide you with any possible scenario of testing. So let's just to quickly go over the sessions that we have on screen. Appraisal. Appraisal, just as your locator. Those are two words you're going to be hearing. Appraisal and locator, they're both placement tests. Appraisal is an extended form of a placement test, whereas locator is a short version of the placement test. Again, they both do the same job, but the appraisal deducts a WTU. What is a WTU? WTU stands for Web Test Units. So every time you test or a student takes a test, a WTU gets deducted. Now, if you are using the appraisal, an extra WTU will get deducted. So keep in mind when you are to use the appraisal. Your appraisal takes about, I believe, 28 minutes, and it has about, I believe it's 30 minutes, I'm sorry, and has about 28 questions. So whereas your locator, on the other hand, takes about 30 minutes, and it's 12 questions, I believe it is. And those questions might be, the timing and the amount of questions might differ, might be different, depending on whether you're using locator or I'm sorry, if you're using your ESL sessions or your ABE sessions. So because those are two different testing series that we're using. So as of right now, you're going to see that the ESL sessions will use the life and work, and your ABE sessions, which by the way, I can go ahead and easily switch here, would have the goals series, which, as Linda said at the beginning, this is your new testing series. Notice that the amount of sessions for ABE is much less. So because of that, I'm going to go ahead and switch back to ESL so that I can explain the extended form, and then we'll go ahead and start quickly start one of those sessions. So again, your appraisal will be your placement test, your intake pretest beginning literacy. This will be for students with entry level of reading, writing, and so forth. For example, your typical example is if you are at the lab welcoming students and you're greeting students, and this particular student is not even able to carry a greeting conversation. Hello, how are you? So this will be a good candidate for your intake pretest beginning literacy session. This session is essentially picture-based. So there's a lot of illustration that would help the student understand the question, and within this intake pretest session, you have two forms, your 027 and your 028 form. Those are under level A. Your appraisal and locator would only locate the student within level A through level D. If the student has a learning level of below level 8, that again is the best case to use your intake pretest beginning literacy reading. Now,
Oscar,
yes, please.
we have a question. Can you show how to disable the questions on the ESL intake and pretest, please?
Very well, yes. So every session has a series of demographic questions that are set at the beginning. These questions are meant to create the profile for the student. How do you disable the questions? You can go ahead and click on your testing session templates. Under your testing session templates, you see the templates for ABE, for ESL, and so forth. We're going to go ahead and click on the edit button for the ESL sessions. Now, because you are, oh, look at this. So remember how we said that one needs to be a coordinator to edit and a proctor to start and edit your sessions. So to start and stop your sessions, I'm sorry. So in order for me to edit my sessions, I would have to log out and log in as coordinator. Of course, in the real scenario, when you become a proctor and coordinator, you can go ahead and do this if you have both access. But for the purpose of us showing you here in our simulation database, it is necessary for us to log out and log back in as a coordinator. So can we hold on that question so that we can go ahead and go over the description, or should we move forward with the coordinator part?
No, I think stay here as proctor, then you can show and model the coordinator later. Thank you for the question. We'll make sure it happens.
Very well. So we'll hold on that question, and I'll show you that next after we go over the description of each of these sessions. So going to the next session down, that is your intake pretest level 8. Your intake pretest level 8 is meant so that you can override the process of the locator. Why would you override the process of the locator? To give you a scenario. You have a student who has a high speaking skills, but their writing perhaps are not within their level. So you want to force that student to stay under level 8 until their writing skills get better. So this will be one scenario where you are forcing the student to stay under a level 8. So this system, this session would go ahead and put the student under a level 8 test and would bypass the process of the locator, the placement test. All right, so intake pretest with locator, your next session down is your most common starting session. So this will take any new student, and as the name of the session says, it will present the student with the locator, which is a placement test, and after the score of the locator, the system is going to go ahead and use that score to present the student with the pretest. Again, the pretest, the locator would only locate the student, would only place the student within level 8 and level D. Your next session down, and again, the locator does not deduct a WTU. Your next session down is your progress post-test. Your progress post-test is for any test after your pretest, whether it's your second, your third, your fourth, your fifth, your 10th test. This will be the session that you are to give the student. Why? Because this session would go ahead and use the score from that pretest and then assign a text and a next test based on that score. CASAS recommends to allow 70 to 100 hours of instruction in between tests in order for that student to score at the appropriate level on that post-test. Next session down will be your registration with practice. Now, remember how about the question previously was that how do you disable your demographic questions? So if you do, you have an option of bringing this demographic information prior to the testing session. So you can always go ahead and start this registration with practice session, and your registration with practice session will gather that demographic information that is presented with the test, and at the point of the test, those students will not be presented with this information. They would only be required to enter the student ID and confirm that this is the right student. After that, the system will bypass, because this information was entered already, to the locator and then the test. So that is your registration. Now, in addition to that, after the demographic information, the students are given the opportunity to do a practice test. This practice test is essentially for practicing. It would only show them the environment of testing. The items are not the actual items, and even when they are to answer the questions, no matter what answer they select, it always show as correct, because the purpose of this is just to get the student familiarized with the testing application. Where is the zoom in button? Where is the zoom out? Where is the volume? Where is the how to answer a question? Where do you click next? How much time does the student has left? Again, it's just to make the student become familiarized with the testing application. Next session down, notice that there's two sessions with about the repeated, with the similar session name. So you have retest score outside of the accuracy range, not same date, and same date only. Both of these sessions are meant for students who are tested outside of the accuracy range. What happens when the students tested outside the accuracy range? Well, it could be the case that the locator has set a test for the student, and the student perhaps does really good on the test or poorly. Either way, if the student does really good, the test will show a diamond. If the student does poorly, then the test will show an asterisk. So if you are to with the diamond, you are not recommended to retest. With an asterisk, on the other hand, you are recommended to retest. And I know that different states have different policies for this. So you might have to refer to your state policies for retesting procedures. But with the asterisk, you are recommended to retest. And if you are testing on the same date, you will use the session same date only. And if you are retesting on a different date, you will use the not same date only. One thing to consider is that the student goes through a lot of testing time, so perhaps it's recommended that the student should test on a different day to allow some breathing room, for the student to test, at a later point. But that's just, a recommendation. Next session down will be returning student pretest. Returning student pretest is for those students who happen to leave the program, after a after a pretest. So let's say, Oscar the student takes a pretest, and then soon after the pretest, Oscar student has to, leave the state perhaps, and does not attend to any more classes. And then a month, or let's say 90 days after, the student, Oscar the student happens to come back, and then it will not be fair for Oscar the student to be post-tested, because there was no, instructional time in between. So it is recommended for the agency to use the returning student pretest, which goes ahead and provides Oscar the student with another locator, which will reassess that new level of learning. It could be the case that Oscar the student might have a higher level of learning, or still the same level. Either way, it's always good to test the student with a locator first, and then based on the locator, give that a pretest. So returning student, it will be the best session. Spanish reading comprehension, this is basically test the comprehension of Spanish. The test itself is in English, but the content will be related with comprehension in Spanish. All right, so having said that, and by the way, do note that the descriptions and purpose of these sessions repeat with your ABE ASC sessions as well. So but you have less because you know there's certain sessions that cater only for ESL, but in general you have the same you know sessions with the goals you know modalities, the goals series. But the purpose of the session is, you know, pretty much the same as I explained with those ESL sessions. All right, so now addressing your demographic selection. So we're gonna go ahead and log out.
Oscar, before you
Yes,
do that, we had an important question about completing the intake process before administering the locator, and I just wanted to address that briefly.
yes, please.
The eTest sessions presume that Oscar is demonstrating now, presume that you
Hello? Oh boy.
which we recommend would include. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. I thought I'd lost you guys for a minute because there was no sound coming out. So just to test, can you guys hear me just fine?
Yes.
Okay, very good. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and move forward with editing your demographic fields. So for that, again, it would require editing capabilities. So I'm gonna go ahead and log out and log back in as a coordinator. So I'm gonna remove this right here and enter coordinator. And my password will be coordinator. All right, so under my coordinator session, this is what you essentially are gonna see. Notice that you have many more sessions than what it was showing. This time around, notice that there is no filters set under my filter boxes. So the system is showing me all the sessions that have been set for the different sites. You know, and again, these are all for simulation purposes for you to practice. So let's go ahead and do a quick filter. So I'm gonna go ahead and set my North Campus. I'm gonna go ahead and stick with, let's go ahead and do your ABE sessions this time around. So having selected this, and I think I had lab 1. So I'm gonna say lab 1. I think I did this in order to, there you go. All right, so these are my lab 1 sessions. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on my testing session templates. This will basically filter, will basically make the changes for all my testing sessions. So if I am to select ABE ASC over here, basically would change any setting within my testing sessions set over here for my ABE ASC. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on edit here. And once I click on the edit under testing session templates, that takes me to my template details page, and within my template configurations, I'm gonna click on data. Under the data, you essentially see that you have 2 columns. One is selected, the other one is available. Selected means that anything that is included here would appear under my testing session. Notice that for now, only student info, barriers to employment, and attainable goals are selected. Available, on the other hand, means that these are fields that are available for me to include. So as of right now, the testing session would only include student info, barriers to employment, and attainable goals. If I want to include, let's say, for example, birth date, I can just go ahead and click on this, use the arrows in the center to move that field to my birth date, to my selected column. Same thing if I want to add gender, I can go ahead and click on gender and add it. Or say if I wanted to remove barriers to employment, I can select barriers to employment, click on the arrow pointing to the right, and move it to the available column. Either way, you can go ahead and leave it however you want. Do note that the only field that is not able to be removed will be student info. What is a student info? That will be essentially the name, first and last, and the student ID. So those are the 2 fields that you are required to have under the selected column. Okay, any other questions regarding the editing of any of the sessions?
No, but Oscar, there have been several requests for me to repeat what I said. This is Christine.
Mhm.
Kathleen Peterson asked the question, are we doing the oral and written screening before sending them to take the locator? And the answer is yes. This presumes that you have completed your intake process that includes an oral and written screening before they take the locator. And we do have that suggested procedure and process called intake process on our eTest help docs. I'll post that in the chat. Thanks.
Very well. All right, so moving along, we review your default testing sessions. We review the purpose of using the locator, the retest session, and using the retest session when you get an asterisk or a diamond, and then your next assigned test. So for the next assigned test, remember that is your post-test session. Just to explain, once you're set up as an agency, you're given essentially two applications. One will be eTest, and this is the one that we're logged in right now, and the other one is TE, that stands for TOPSpro Enterprise. TOPSpro Enterprise essentially is for your administrators. So because of that, this application, TOPSpro Enterprise, should not be installed in a testing computer because you don't want to have your student have any form of access to this data. You want to have it only on those computers that are perhaps at the office, for those administrators, or perhaps under the proctored computer. Another thing to mention is that the proctored computer, because it's a proctored computer, does not need to be registered. What is registered? Registration, computer registration, is basically connecting that computer with your application so that when you start the session, you start your testing sessions, the system knows what computers are connected to eTest. So, and we'll go ahead and go over the steps soon. Now, the next session we're going to cover will be preparing for eTest. So, preparing for eTest, basically, we're going to go ahead and check to make sure that all of the testing sessions are registered. As I said, your stations need to be registered in order to be recognized by the system. CASAS or eTest is compatible with PCs, with Windows 10, and with iPads and Chromebooks. So you are welcome to use any combination of them, and each one will require a registration process. Let me go ahead and log out to show you what this registration process is. So I'm going to go ahead and log out, and I'm going to go ahead and exit from this screen over here. So we go back to the main page for my simulation server. Under here, you notice that you have take a test button and register this computer. So if I am to register the computer, I would go ahead and click on this link. Now, in order to register a computer, the system will require two users. It could be one coordinator, one proctor, or two proctors or two coordinators. It doesn't matter as long as they have access rights for eTest. So I'm going to go ahead and run the executable file, and the system is going to ask me to, with the credentials, to log in and register this computer. So again, we're under the simulation database, so I'm going to enter 4908. The user is going to be coordinator 0 at rhas.org, and password again will be coordinator. And this is what the registration page looks like. Here, the system will ask for me to select a site. You have to enable the site for testing. So once you are set up with the login credentials for your agency, CASAS will go ahead and create one site for you. But if you need additional sites, you can go ahead and always create additional sites. You can always refer to tech support if you need assistance with creating additional sites. Those sites would have to be enabled for e-testing. It's just a matter of making a selection under the site options to mark it as an eTest site, and then it would appear under this list. So I'm going to go ahead and select this. I would go ahead and if there are no labs created, so this is, you create a lab basically at the time of registering the computer. And then once it's created, it will be available under this list. So you select your lab, and then the station, you are to name the station one by one. The registration process has to be done individually on each of those computers. This is a one-time process, so you don't have to register the computer each and every time you test. It's a one-time process. The registration should stay. Just a disclosure, the only thing that would delete that registration, let's say, will be if you are to go through a major update on that computer, or a hardware component or a software component gets deleted from the computer, then it would potentially cause for you to lose that registration. But it's not common. It doesn't happen often. So once you register, your registration should stay. So once we name the station, you can go ahead and click register. And I'm going to say station 1. We're not going to complete this process because of time over here. But once I click on registration, notice that the system would ask for a second person. So then the second person logs in and confirms the registration. All right, so that's to explain. So I'm going to go ahead and move to the next area down. We are running short on time. So let's see, date of testing. So registration of the computer, we talk about that. The registration of the student, that is the fields that you are to enter, that student, I'm sorry, is to enter at the beginning. Remember where the student is presented with demographic information, that is used to build that profile, to create that student information record, to create that student in your database. Start and stopping your testing sessions. So let me go ahead and log in one more time as a proctor. Again, remember, proctor is the person who starts and stops your sessions. All right, very good. So how do you start your session? You click on the start button. So I'm going to go ahead and choose my intake pretest session, because that will be your most common session that you are to use at the beginning. So if I click on the start button, the system will first present me with the amount of hours I want to leave this session open for. Now, keep in mind that this is for the session. So multiple students can test under one same computer. Once one finishes, the other one starts under 4 hours, assigned. The test itself, that's a different story. That the test would go ahead and last anywhere from 60 to 75 minutes, depending on the testing series that you're using and the level of the test. We're going to go ahead and click on start. Once we click on start, the system will take me to your session activity window. Under the session activity window, here's where you're going to monitor the student, and what student is testing, their status, what form they're taking, at what time they started, how much time they have left, what question they're on, and so forth. And here you also have the capability of adding your stations. So once you've are ready to test, you would add your stations. Obviously, we would have to register the stations in order to add a station. Once you add your station, it's just a matter to go back to the initial screen. Let me go ahead and to the initial screen and click on take a test and run that executable file. Now, how do you intervene a test once the session is started? So let me go back to testing session here. Once you start a session, you will see this view button. Under this view button, that will take you back to the session activity window. And when the student is selected over here, you would also have an intervene button. So your intervene button is to, either pause the test, or if you need to stop the session because every student finished testing, then you are to go back to your testing session and you click on the manage button. Notice that the manage button only appears after you start a session. So you click on your manage button and then you would go ahead and click on the stop button. Because this is not, we haven't selected any student, the stop button is not available as of yet. But once you select students, you should have a stop button here and the system will go ahead and stop the session. Stopping the session is a very important step because the session is open for 4 hours. If the session is not stopped, then the session will become suspended. And when the session will become suspended, you'll see that under status over here. Notice that your status is either stop or active right now. If the session runs out of past those 4 hours, the session becomes suspended, and any computer that is selected under this session will become hostage to the session. And what do I mean with hostage? It means that if Christine, let's say for example, comes back to the lab and she wants to run the progress post-test session, the stations that I've selected under intake pretest will not be available for Christine, even though there's no one testing under that computer. So it is very, very important for you to always stop the session once you finish the testing. In theory, is the equal that if you are testing, with paper testing, let's say for example, in the library, and you walked out of the library and leave those, booklets open for other students to come in. So the system will go ahead and hold those stations hostage until you, as the proctor, stop that session. All right, so let me go ahead and log out over here, and just to go over the step of starting your session. Once the session is started, you would go ahead and click on take a test. The system will go ahead and ask you to run an executable file. Once you run that executable file, the system will then ask you to enter the student ID. This is where the student basically will step in and will enter his or her ID. Now, obviously, the student will need a student ID in order to take a test. What if the student does not have an ID as of yet, because this is part of your registration process? Well, what I can tell you is that agencies would use the name, the first name of the student with the last name initial with the birth date, 2 months, two digits for the month, 2 digits for the date, and 4 digits for the year. If you combine all those three, and this is just a quick, tip that agencies, I heard agencies doing, this will provide you with a very unique ID that it is, not likely to be repeated. In the meantime, the student gets tested, and once the student receives a score, for their test, then you can go ahead and assign a, register that student under a certain class, under a certain level, and then the student ID will be created. And then it's just a matter to go to TE and, modify this student ID. Let me take you quickly to TE, because we have a couple of minutes left. And in TE, this is what TE looks like. Now, TE, as I said, this is basically where you administer, your data, where you manage your data. So just like eTest has a simulation database, TE has a simulation, application as well. So notice that I'm selecting Rolling Hills under my server. My agency is still 4908. This time I'm logging in as an administrator, because in TE there is no eTest coordinator or eTest proctor for the sake of connecting, because those rights only pertain to eTest. For TE will be, other type of rights. So a user potentially would have eTest access and TE access if they carry both roles. So I'm gonna go ahead and log in as administrator, and my password will be admin. Again, you're always welcome to use this from your own office, from your own home, to practice. I'm gonna click on connect. And this is accessing me. This is me accessing the database. So I'm gonna go ahead and go to records, students, demographics, records, students, demographics, and under demographics, I can see all the demographic records that the system has created. Again, this is simulation data, and I could always double click on any of these students. I would open their demographic student information. I can click on the pencil, which changed my mode to edit, and then I can potentially, change this ID, and then save. As simple as that. In addition to that, notice that under my navigator, I have all the information that pertains to the student. The in-program year, which is the years the student is active. The student records, which is any record that, with the demographic information that the system will create. Any class enrollments, any program enrollments, any test the student takes, all that is displayed under TE for me to create reports, edit the data, and so forth. Okay, how are we doing with time, Christine?
You have 4 more minutes.
4 more minutes, very well. All right, so another request is talking about the access for the users. So as is explained before, a user can potentially be a eTest user and a TE if they carry both roles. So how do you add the access for an eTest user? And this pertains to the data manager. So as you're set up with an agency, you'll be asked to set a data manager, to assign a data manager. There can only be one data manager per agency. You can have TE admins, which you can have as many as you want, and that is the next level down in access after the data manager. But for the data manager, essentially, this person is the person that is responsible for the database. If anything happens with the database, we are to contact the data manager. So this person is to create users accounts. How do you create a user account? By going to organization, users, and here you have all the users account. Again, this is simulation database, and you see all the administrators from 01 to 50 over here. Okay, we actually have a little more than that. You also see the coordinators for eTest and the proctors for eTest as well. Notice that there's other accounts that have been created. So in order to create a new user account, we're going to go ahead and click on the new button located on the upper left-hand corner. So once we click on that, the system's going to take us to this blank page, and CASAS recommends for you to use the work email of the user to create a new user account. Essentially, the system will take any form of ID. This could be a numeric and alphabetic combination. So the system will take anything, but for to make it easier for the user, you can always take the recommendation from CASAS and use the work email. So I'm going to go ahead and create one for myself quickly. So opena@casas.org. Password. This is going to be a temporary password because when the user logs in the very first time, the system will go ahead and ask the user to reset the password. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and enter my name lowercase, first name lowercase, so Oscar, and under retype password, same thing, Oscar. Then we're going to go ahead and assign a group. So as you can see over here, some of the groups start with the ET and others start with the TE. ET stands for eTest and TE is for TOPSpro Enterprise. So essentially, Oscar, the user, is going to be a ET coordinator / proctor that gives Oscar, the user, access for eTest. And in addition to that, Oscar, the user, let me go ahead and click on the add button to save. Notice that the system will confirm that, that the user has taken the coordinator in the proctor training. Very important. I'm going to go ahead and say yes over here, and then I'm going to go ahead and add access for TE. Let's say the Oscar, the user, is going to be a TE admin access. All right, so then Oscar, the user, you can add access. Okay, so let's go ahead and, so essentially just to show you over here, that's basically what the system would, let you do. So one type of access for eTest and one type of access for TE. Then in addition to that, I am required, in order to save this record, to enter first name, last name, and email. So quickly, Oscar Peña, and my email, I'm just going to copy and paste here. And then I can go ahead and save. Once I save, I can go ahead and go back to users, and looking at name over here, I'm going to go ahead and choose contains and Peña. There it is. There's Oscar Peña, and there's the access that I assigned, and there's your user. So that is how you create and assign access to those users. Now, you might come across some users that perhaps have forgotten their password. You can go ahead and always access this and click on the change password, and then you can go ahead and assign the password. Keep in mind that this password will be a temporary password, and when the user logs back in, the system will go ahead and ask him to reset the password. Also, this is a good, a place where you can disable the user. Let's say the user goes for vacation or is not, it's on maternity leave perhaps. You can always disable the user, and once they come back, you would go ahead and remove this check mark over here, and this user will go ahead and get their access back again. So again, just to go over, we went over the default testing sessions. We went over the eTest demo, then preparing for eTest, that is before the actual date of the test, and then at the date of the test, we went over the procedure that you need to do to start your sessions. And after that, we went to TE and look at the users once that data gets transferred to your database, and how do you create users accounts and disabling, enabling, and resetting the password. Any questions? I'll take that as a no. Go ahead, I'm
Thank
sorry.
you, Oscar. Yes, we've had a lot of questions. If you could, Oscar, would you please just go to the website real quickly?
Sure.
And we'll show everybody where this will be able to be reviewed. So on the landing page of the CASAS website.
Just make a new page. Give me 1 second.
Sure. When you go to the CASAS website, on the far right-hand side, you'll see the What's New underneath the banner. And if you click on News and Updates Webinars, you'll see some of the past webinars as well as the webinar that we are conducting today. At the top, you'll see January 15th. That's the webinar that we're in today. And then very shortly, within the next day or two, you'll see a link to the webinar itself and the video recording. So any of the questions that you have, if you had a question and you needed an answer and you still haven't gotten one, because we do have 240 people on the webinar right now, please post your email address in the chat box with your question. Many of you have already done that. Thank you. And we will address those questions. Carla, you have a question. We are over time. Erica, I see that you have a question as well. We're happy to stay on for a minute or two to answer those questions. If you need to leave us, thank you so much for joining us. We will be happy to answer your questions. If you have a specific question, please post your question with your email in the chat box and we will get to it. Oh, thank you so much for the feedback. I'm glad that you can never get enough of this. We are happy to help. And thank you so much for the feedback. We're glad things are working well for you. And no, you don't email Mr. Pena for questions with registration. You can email techsupport@casas.org. That's techsupport@casas.org for help with registration information. You can also go to the website, Oscar, if you want to go to the website and the help docs. Someone has a question about how to register students. We have all of those help docs on the website. On the eTest.
That is correct. So if you are to go to www.casas.org and on the top menu, click on Training and Support, and then on the side menu, click on either eTest Online if you have questions about eTest, or TOPSpro Enterprise Help if you have any questions about TOPSpro. So under TOPSpro, you can go ahead and click on Class, Student, and Teacher Information on the side menu. And here is information related with TE. So the question was, how do you create new students under TE? So the document will be how to manually, let's see, how to manually, where are you? Enter a new student, how to manually enter a new student. So if we are to download this PDF, it would go ahead and take me through the steps of creating that new student record in TE. Essentially, you are to go to record students demographics. I apologize, it seems that we're getting some internet connection here. Yes, let me go ahead and refresh this. I know that they're updating the website. So that could be one of the reasons. But essentially, if you are to, go to our CASAS website and download the document, this document should be available very soon. And then you can go ahead and, access this documentation to create a user. And you're always welcome to contact CASAS, tech support, for us to walk you through the process. We do have the capability of connecting to your computer, and it's just like if we are sitting right next to you, we can have control of the mouse and walk you through each of those steps. Any other questions?
There are some questions which we will answer via email to individuals. Thank you so much for joining us today. We will stay on for a few minutes in the chat box. I want to thank Oscar Pena and I want to thank Linda Taylor for hosting today. And again, we look forward to our next webinar. Our next webinar is scheduled for
February 19th.
Yep. At the
Next
same
one, and after on March 18th.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.